Good morning, David Paul here. Good morning, world. And what a great day this is today. The sun's not shining. But it's bright. And I'm not cold. In fact, I'm toasty warm. And I'm beginning to realise that I've finally pulled it off. Here I am in my airframe, and it's just so nice in here. And it's not what I expected. I expected that having the walls closing in like this would feel claustrophobic, because airframes always look great from the outside, but I always imagined they would be claustrophobic, and yet this is not. I would suggest that anybody building one has the timbers upwards, because it gives a sort of soaring effect rather than closed in. I don't know, maybe I should build another one with the timbers across, but I'm not going to do that. I'm happy with this. So I did say on my last video that when I got rid of that black tarpaulin that was over this end and put the transparent one on, I'd be walking up by the daylight and it would be a completely different experience. I've had, since I split up with my ex-wife, I didn't really, for myself, want to spend the money on accommodation, because it's just holding you back paying rent. And I have ideas and projects elsewhere that I want to, I want to see out. I want to be a homesteader, and it's becoming a struggle, but I see my way clear to doing this now. I have managed to just wring out all of the expenses in my life, so that my wage is kind of there just really to buy food. And this is going to work. Just everything I'm doing is just working. It's very strange. The teaching, I'm not getting the teaching work, but I'm slowly evolving into a situation where I don't think I really need it. And to be honest, I shouldn't be working. I'm 72 almost. And what I should be doing is doing these creative projects while I still have breath in my body. So anyway, observations. I had a cabin which drove me nearly insane up in Watford, and it was surrounded by traffic. I'll not be too specific. And it was very, very, very noisy. Well, there was a nearby motorway here to where I am. It's distant, but you can hear the traffic noise from it. And it's gone now. It is completely gone. I cannot hear that traffic noise. And it's because this thing is developing some integrity. And I haven't even, I've got to get this at the bottom here. I've got to get that fixed together. And the gable end's actually fixed onto the cabin, which is not the situation at the moment. And this here tarpaulin is nowhere near as soundproof as you would get from a proper window. So that is another, where noise can get through. So it's only going to improve when this goes and there's a proper door here or something like that. I found some glass, which I'm going to go and try and recover, which will form a, equilateral triangle window at the top up there, and another one up here. So that's going to look spectacular. It's going to feel spectacular. It's going to give me. I'm going to wake up where those bands are. It's going to look something like that. I'm going to wake up in the morning. I'm going to have a perspective looking out on the trees, and that's going to be beautiful. One of the things about living in small spaces is that the windows are closer to you. So what you call the angle subtended at the eye is much greater. So your views out are much better. So ironically, they're actually less claustrophobic than a large space can be. Now this thing is 6 feet in each direction. So it's a 6 feet square base that I'm living in, the floor. And I'm 5'10", so that's adequate space for me. And I've got a new mattress in here, a bed sort of thing. And it's really, really comfortable. And this is the most comfortable I've been in years. The beds in my girlfriend's house in the Philippines are like rocks. And this is just gorgeous. So anyway, it's warm because there's my body heat in here keeping it warm. And it's made of materials which are intrinsically warm anyway. There's infill's got to go in here, which I've got to go and seek wood to do this. So I've got to infill all these here. This has got to be pulled in here with some tie ropes. Pull it in tight, and then finally put some wooden strips down and nail it all solid. Now I had a business. There was a business that said I could have pallets, and their pallets are 8 feet long. So those pallets, I could actually build another one of these 8 feet by 8 feet, and that would be a substantial building. Should I do that? Probably not. I should probably just stick to this project. But it's tempting to think that I could maybe extend this and make it 8 feet. So the way it works is you take the side dimension, whatever that may be that you're building to, and it's also incredibly fresh here. There's air leaking in, so I'm not stuffy at all. No panic attacks in the middle of the night because you're suffocating. Anyway, the way it works is you've got a dimension, so it's an equilateral triangle. If you call the sides X, right? And you take whatever the side X is and then multiply it by 0.87, which gives you the height. So the height that it's going to be. So for a person of my height, in order to get headroom sufficient for me to stand up, I'm going to need a cabin which is about 8 feet by 8 feet. Which is just dandy because you don't really want to make it too big. The big payoff, the huge payoff of having a small cabin is that you stay warm with very little heat input. And I've got the situation here. I'm beginning to wonder, can I rig up a fire in here which runs on about 3 candles with a flue? So what I would have is I'd have a fire, and it would be using tea lights and that would be your fuel. Because honestly, having real fires in cabins, it's so much hard work. And I wonder about how far I can push the insulation to the extent that you just don't need the heating. And I think I can do that. So anyway, let's have a very small tour of the cabin. So here we got the stove, which does my cooking. All this space, which is now beginning to fill with clutter, but there's a lot more space than I had before in the tent, and this is about as much stuff as will be in here. I'll put a hook on the wall there and I'll hang my coat up, and maybe it helps keep my feet warm in the night. But I am warm, I'm toasty warm. I've got a gap there where I need to fill that in. I had lengths of wood in the corner there, and I've also got to do that. So they go in. Then in the corner there, I've got to do that. And at the minute, I'm as poor as a church mouse, and I need to buy some screws to put all this paneling in. I'm not teaching. There's no work at the minute. The economy of this country is a mess, and the schools are not hiring teachers. And it's always the case if you're a teacher that when the economy's bad, nobody moves in their jobs and there's no teaching work. So that's the way it is. I'm going to jump ship on this whole show, and I'm going to start living in Portugal and the Philippines, going back and forwards between the two, and that's it. So I'll teach when it appears, because the teaching does generate money, and projects get done quicker, like cars bought, things like that. I'm wondering about buying a van and living in the van partly, so I can travel about. I want to be able to travel. So there's a guy I know, he lives in a cabin round here, and he got the idea from me, and once he saw me doing that, then he built his own cabin. And so anyway, that guy's now bought himself a boat, so it's making me wonder about living in a boat again. Don't know. You're getting in the system then. I'm very happy here. And there's also the option of building other cabins in other places. I mean, really, I could build this thing in Portugal. And on top of that, I can even have it such that it folds down. You know, I can buy land in Portugal, and the law says you can have temporary buildings on some places, and I can have a place that just folds down in minutes. You could have it such that this part was hinged, and this part had a hinge in the centre, and it just collapsed. And then that's it, you can tow it on the back of a car. That's something worth considering. That could be quite amazing. You'd be restricted to a width of 7.5 feet, which I think is 2 meters, I'm not sure, but 7.5 feet. So that would give you this cabin, but it would be 1.5 feet extra wide on here. So anybody want to give that a try? And of course, lengthwise, you're restricted to 23 feet now. If you put the A-frame in the other orientation, you've now got an A-frame which is 23 feet wide. and you could come up with some sort of Russian doll-like arrangement where one part folded on top of the other. So you could have a cabin situation where you are restricted to sizes, something like a cabin maybe 23 feet by 23 feet, or 23 feet by whatever else you can pack in on the length. And that could be one hell of a tiny house, one hell of a huge tiny house, towable behind a vehicle. So that's it. This video is mostly about feelings and how this feels, and this feels great. Because there's something about living in a structure which blocks sound and gives a sense of enclosure and protection. We all want that, you know. So I think moving forward in the buildings I'm making, I think I've talked previously about houses where you can have outdoor parts to them, like balconies and open air rooms and stuff like that, and perhaps even rooms open to the sky. But when you're vulnerable and you're asleep and you want to be on your own and things like that, there's nothing beats somewhere that's got this sense of protection. And maybe you only want one window. Maybe that's something you want. Maybe you don't want windows all over the place. Frank Lloyd Wright said that, you know, he thought he built buildings where they had like a refuge area and an area of prospect. So, for example, in this room, you would be down there and you'd feel safe and enclosed and so on, and you'd have the prospect to look at, which is the outside world at this end. So that's something worth considering. Should I just have windows at one end? Not sure about that. I'll have a think about that after this video. But anyway, I'm going to stop talking. I'm just going to let you listen to the piece in here. The faint sound of an aeroplane, and that's it. And one pigeon or something like that. Okay, so that's it. This is how it feels. Jesus be with you.